Broken Link closed out Season 4 with Odo being made human. Apocalypse Rising now opens Season 5 to deal with both that and the revelation that he had from the Founders, that Gowron is, in fact, a changeling. That's the kind of thing that demands the most important response possible. Yes, I'm talking about a meeting! Sisko and Dax are on Earth for that meeting, while everyone on the station is stewing because their runabout is overdue. Worf and Kira are butting heads over that. Low-key, it should be noted, a surprise for both of them. Over what to do about that. Worf wants the Defiant to go looking for them, Kira wants the Defiant to stay here defending the station, and O'Brien would probably just like it if they could avoid breaking the Defiant after he finally got the damn thing working again. The matter is settled when the runabout limps back, damaged after a Klingon attack. Just one of many that have been taking place now that open war exists between the Federation and the Klingons. The best way out is to prove to the Klingons that Gowron is a shapeshifter, and that this war is a manipulation by the Dominion, so they plan to send in an infiltration team to handle it, and it will be led by Sisko. It's not a bad call, besides the fact that he makes the average Klingon warrior nervous and most of the rest jealous. He also has a great deal of Changeling experience, and that could be pretty important on this mission. The episode does the important job of putting DS9 back on track. The original intention of the creators had been for the concept that would become Homefront Paradise Lost to lead to a cliffhanger ending for Season 3 that would then conclude at the start of Season 4. Paramount's marching orders said otherwise, and ultimately it led to the stuff with the Klingons. I'll get more into that next month. The Klingon stuff was a distraction to what they were trying to do with the Dominion threat, so Apocalypse Rising seeks to start off Season 5 by bringing that era to a conclusion, but in such a way as to tie those events into the Dominion conflict. After all, the Romulan Changeling had commented that the only threats left were the Federation and the Klingons, which wouldn't remain so for long. So having their war be part of a Dominion plot kept the Klingon stuff relevant. A good example of taking a problem your story needs to address and turning it into an asset for it.
After the titles and a little case of Quark's fun personality, he goes to find Odo, who's got a nice glass of champagne. At the moment, he's listening to his drink, and I think we've all been there at one time or another, and usually regretted it. Waking up the next morning with someone who barely qualifies as a member of your species, and with a brand new tattoo that inexplicably has the Chinese character for fog.
Completely normal phenomenon.
Odo isn't finding his work as fulfilling as he used to, which actually is good, because it means that he should be up for this crazy infiltration plan that Sisko's part of. Well, he doesn't think he's up for that either, but Sisko won't take "I'm brooding" for an answer. At the meeting, yes, another meeting. It's a two-meeting kind of problem we've got. He explains that the Klingons have relocated their command center to a base in an asteroid field that's thoroughly defended from everything, even cloaked ships, and has 30 warships there at all times. Not to mention that Gowron is surrounded by elite bodyguards. So this is going to be even harder than that time they tried to rob the mob when they took over Vic's casino. And of course, the question is, even if they somehow get past all of that stuff and whatever else is in there, alligator pits, rolling boulders, poison darts, whatever else, to finally get to Gowron, how do they then prove he's a changeling? Worf suggests killing him, and O'Brien points out that it would turn him back to a gelatinous state and thus reveal he's a changeling, which makes Worf even happier. Killing just seemed like the best way to deal with any problem. Sisko poo-poos that plan. This is the Federation. We don't assassinate. We solve our problems with tech, mister. That's when he whips out his big brass balls. I mean, the technology there. Although you probably knew that. These are far too small to be Sisko's brass balls.
Very impressive.
And this coming from a man whose job requires him to inspect balls on a regular basis. I promise I will never let narrative discussions or an analysis of a character arc get in the way of making a dick joke. Anyway, these things will hopefully destabilize a changeling in the area that they have surrounded, but they have to be activated simultaneously, and what's worse, the radiation they give off can be fatal, so they can only expose a person with them once, or else they will turn this into an assassination mission. So they'll need a way to get there, and much like in Unification, we'll need a Klingon bird of prey to do it, but not to go in there cloaked, but just to try to blend in. And luckily Dukat has one and is kindly disposed towards them at the moment for 3 reasons. His daughter Zial is here, he's also enemies of the Klingons, and he'd like to get into Kira's pants. So you can imagine how annoyed he is when he shows up to discover that she's pregnant, and probably more so that it's not his. Dukat loves the ladies, and he seems to be trying to start his own race. So Kira decides to mess with him.
Shakar's not the father.
But then who is?
Chief O'Brien.
I'm looking forward to Dukat staring at O'Brien the entire trip in stupefied silence. It might also have to do with the fact that O'Brien has been turned into a Klingon. He and Odo and Sisko. The original intent for this episode was probably for the 4 people to be Sisko, his mission after all, Odo, infiltration experience plus the importance for both the plot and his own character evolution that we'll get to later on, Worf, because he's already a Klingon, and Jadzia, with intimate knowledge of Klingon culture. But that wasn't going to happen. Terry Farrell not only bursts into flames in direct sunlight, but her skin can't handle heavy makeup. So O'Brien would wind up being the Ringo of this group. And while they're there, Damar is, I don't know, I'm not really a Beatlemaniac. I'll say he's Lyndon Johnson. All he wants to do is bomb the place rather than trying this whole exposing Gowron thing. But the rest aren't too confident that a single volley from a tiny bird of prey will cripple the command center of the most powerful warrior empire in the entire quadrant. They might have some defenses in place to stop that kind of thing. There's a filler scene with Bashir and Kira about her being pregnant, with the in-joke that it's his fault because in real life she's pregnant with his child. Only mentioned it because if I don't, people will say I forgot, rather than the far truer, I really don't care. Instead, it's time to get back to Worf trying to prep the trio to be Klingons. He starts with Odo, a problem because Odo's still miserable and would sooner sit in the corner than pretend he's a Klingon.
Perhaps it is better if I went...
Are you questioning the validity of my plan?
Very in character, sir. What character? Odo finally walks out, convinced that he's going to screw this up. Sisko does his best to be supportive, although it might be hard to tell.
Odo, I know this has been a difficult time for you. That you would have never chosen to become a solid. But what's done is done.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
Brooding about it isn't going to change anything. And shirking your responsibilities isn't going to make you feel better about yourself.
It might sound a little bit harsh, but remember that he's coming from personal experience here, having to come to terms with Jennifer's death and his bleak outlook on his future in Starfleet as a result of that, and how he had to accept the situation and move on with his life and with his career. And he knows that Odo is like him, deeply committed to his work, until this tragedy comes along and derails everything. But beneath all of that, the commitment is still there, and getting him back to it will give him something to help fill the void the tragedy has left in his life. Things get difficult when another Klingon ship shows up and asks to talk visually, and Dukat's holographic disguise for just this kind of situation malfunctions. Luckily, there's a plan B. Have Worf speak to them. But Dukat instead goes for plan C. C as in, see if you can dodge these disruptors, asshole. While everyone is irritated that Dukat did that, besides their natural concern for other life, every ship in the Alpha Quadrant that is destroyed fighting each other is one less ship to oppose the Dominion. But the news gets worse. He's not hanging around to pick them up afterwards. His reasoning is hard to argue with. If they fail, they'll be killed, or captured and then killed. And if they succeed, the Klingons will be happy with them and more than likely give them a lift back home. Assuming that disintegrated ship of theirs wasn't the one that they used to deliver VIPs, of course. Back on DS9, Jake is almost as grim as Odo was. Not just because his father is on a very, very dangerous mission, but the whole mood of the station speaks of their worry. Made all the worse because their enemy's response to going to war is enthusiastic cheers and breaking out the liquor. They don't need anyone to try to lift their morale, which means that Quark's going to be stuck with that crate of t-shirts saying, "Keep calm and Klingon on." Our insertion team is joining in, of course. It's full frontal Klingon in that place. There's eating, fighting, drinking, all part of the official ceremony. If you pull through all of that and can greet Gowron conscious and manage to avoid throwing up on his boots, well, you've proven yourself. It's like a fraternity without the spanking machine, basically. The celebration has an unexpected guest, General Martok. At this point in the show, we'd only seen him once in The Way of the Warrior, but he visited DS9 personally, so there's a chance that he might recognize one of them. Especially Worf. I mean, his disguise is undoing his ponytail. Even Clark Kent would find that disguise a little bit thin. Funny enough, the one that he runs into is O'Brien, poor guy. Not the least which being that his makeup is not flattering. O'Brien looks more like a Klingon hamster than a warrior. O'Brien bluffs his way through, so that means it's Odo's turn to screw things up. A Klingon knocks him off balance as he's putting the brass ball in position, and another Klingon spots it. Fortunately, Worf comes up with a convincing name for it.
Hodrak, my brother. You found it.
Found what?
It is a tinkerbot.
A what?
Yeah, did you call that a tinker butt? I think that's a Disney porn parody character. Well, that problem has finally been sorted out just as Gowron shows up, so Odo can put it in place, only to find out that someone else is going to hang out where he's supposed to put it. Finally, though, he gets it up there in place so that Sisko can activate the thing, only for Sisko to get called up before he has this chance to switch them all on. Yeah, it's like this plan is being thwarted as if the Klingons hired Mr. Bean for their security, cluelessly blundering into ways to F up the opponent. So Martok gets the chance to see Sisko up close and personal and sees through the disguise. So soon, all four of them are stuck in a cell listening to Martok's belly aching about getting captured in this damn fool plan of theirs. The worst part is that he does suspect Gowron of being a changeling, but of course the Tinkerbutts were all destroyed, so they can't use that to reveal him. So it goes back to Plan Worf. Kill him! Kill him to death! He suggests Martok challenge Gowron to honorable combat, but Martok says, hey, I've got an even better idea. Instead of me being put in peril fighting Gowron, how about you guys go do it? So he frees them, killing some of his own guards on the way out, who I think would probably have preferred the honorable combat to getting a knife in their own guts. Martok keeps Odo behind while the other three rush in, Worf taking on Gowron himself, and Gowron quite happy to let him try. This actually helps Odo with his journey through this episode, as he now is putting the pieces together as his job would normally require him. Gowron could have let his bodyguards fight, but refused, because his honor demanded that he fight, whereas Martok would rather spill the blood of his fellow Klingons than challenge Gowron, a politician and far more likely a changeling with no skill whatsoever with a bat'leth. Any Klingon in this room could best the changeling. And that's what he's worried about. Gowron isn't the changeling, Martok is, and Odo exposes him just as Worf is about to deliver the death blow, showing how vital Odo's presence was on this mission. If anyone else had been with them, he'd have just assassinated the leader of the Klingon Empire. Although with Klingons, that might have made them very happy. But the interesting thing here is that when Odo announces Martok's a changeling, Martok immediately tries killing him, no doubt knowing that he was already dead. And as a final act, he was going to murder Odo for his betrayal. It seems that the change that they impose now means that Odo can be harmed with impunity by changelings. As if he needed more proof that his people were assholes, huh? But the funny part is, when Odo's done with this, he wants his old face back, the one that reminds him that he used to be a changeling. They've given up on him, but Odo seems to have not given up on them. So the Klingon situation is partly resolved, but there's more to it than that. Even though Martok was the one who pushed for war, now that they're in it to win it, even if it's exactly what the Founders want them to do. The only way to call it off now would be for the Federation to allow the Klingons to annex the disputed territory, and that's not very likely. Last time something like that happened was with the Cardassians, and that turned into a circus of problems for everybody. Gowron is at least willing to issue a temporary ceasefire in the hopes that some face-saving way to end this war can be found. He is nevertheless grateful to all of them, except for Worf, because Gowron is a sore loser. Post-episode follow-up? Annoying character goes to Damar, Mr. Killjoy. He'll be more fun once you have a substance abuse problem. All scores are relative to the series. Final score for Apocalypse Rising is 5 out of 10, meaning it's a typical DS9 episode. Some good character, a nice easing back into the show, and it did a fine job of working on setting things back on course while leaving the change a natural one. Nothing to really quibble about, but nothing to really write home about either. It's a competently done example of how DS9 handles things, but not a standout example of that. All hail the Overlord! hard.
I think I'm actually beginning to like blood wine. It's really not too bad. Except for the taste.